In the reactions on my ECJ video about the loss of EU citizenship of UK citizens, the topic of British immigrants in the EU and deportations came up. And today I have some follow-up information and some facts on that topic for you. The debate around Brexit has focused on ending free movement of people from the European Union to the UK. And the reality is that also British citizens no longer benefit of free movement in the EU, and the consequences are becoming more and more visible. Data published in December by the EU Statistical Office Eurostat show that about 2,250 UK citizens were ordered to leave EU countries between 2020 and September 22. The number increases to 2,830 when adding Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland, which are not part of the EU, but apply free movement rules. Information about the reasons why these Britons were ordered to leave is not always available, but so it's not possible to know how many living in the EU before Brexit were affected. Citizens' rights campaigners fear there might have been problems with the implementation of the EU-UK withdrawal agreement, but others say it's registering before Brexit that's the problem. But Eurostat data on non-EU citizens ordered to leave include people found to be illegally present in an EU member state who are subject to an administrative or judicial decision imposing them to depart. And this could be for a variety of reasons, from not meeting residency requirements to having committed crimes. More than 1 million non-EU citizens were ordered to leave EU countries in the time between 2020 and September 22. You can see this in the statistics as well. But of these, some 2,250 were British. The data reveal major differences in the approach taken by EU member states. While France was responsible for the highest proportion of leave orders to non-EU citizens in 2021 with 37%, it's Sweden and the Netherlands that have taken the toughest stance towards Brits then. Sweden was responsible for 1,050 leave orders to British citizens between 2020 and September 22, with 590 between July and September 21 alone. In those 3 months, Sweden also imposed 110 young Britons below the age of 18 to leave. The Netherlands follow with 615 ordered to leave the UK nationals since Brexit, and the Dutch immigration agency IND, however, told that even after a leave order, a person can apply for a residence permit or appeal a negative decision without leaving the country immediately. And the IND said some 70 Britons were granted a residence permit under the withdrawal agreement after having received an order to leave. Norway and Switzerland, which are not part of the EU and have separate Brexit agreements with the UK, issued 455 and 125 departure orders to UK citizens respectively, according to Eurostat data. Malta followed with 115, France with 95, Belgium with 65, Latvia with 55, Denmark with 40, Finland and Poland with 30, Germany 25, Croatia, Greece, Lithuania and Romania with 20, Austria, Cyprus, Estonia and Hungary with 10, Bulgaria and Czechia with 5. Overall, UK citizens were almost 10% of people ordered to leave Malta. The share was above 2% in Sweden, the Netherlands and Latvia, while it was below 1% in all other countries. In line with data for other nationalities, the majority of leave orders concerned men with 1,560. 195 also affected young people below the age of 18, with Sweden topping the list again, followed by the Netherlands and Germany, according to this information that's available. The UK left the European Union on January 31st in 2020, and free movement with EU countries ended on December 31st in 2020, following the post-Brexit transition period. The withdrawal agreement secured the residence rights of Britons who had moved to the EU and of EU citizens who had moved to the UK before December 31st, 2020. 13 EU countries and Norway required British citizens to apply for a new resident status, like the UK asked from EU citizens, and the other 14 requested Britons to simply register or exchange documents. Eurostat data do not make a distinction between Britons with rights protected under the withdrawal agreement and those who moved to EU countries after Brexit. Most countries reporting expulsions, however, had adopted a constitutive system requesting Britons to apply to remain. The orders to leave figures are worrying as we don't have the data to dig deeper into the reasons why and whether they included people covered by the withdrawal agreement. But not surprisingly, Sweden is top of the list, as we do know that statistically the percentage of refusals of status in Sweden is far higher than in an equivalent country. And the numbers ordered to leave correspond fairly close to refusals of status under the withdrawal agreement. The number in the Netherlands is a bit more surprising, but if we consider the starting point in the negotiations, both sides said that citizens' rights were the number one priority and nobody would be deported. That seems to have been quietly ended on both sides. When it comes to immigration law enforcement, Eurostat also collects statistical information from national authorities about non-EU citizens found to be illegally present and refused entry at the EU external borders. These data are currently only available up to 2021, and information for some member states is incomplete, so we have to wait to talk about that one. Non-EU nationals are considered illegally present under national immigration law if they have been found to have entered the country unlawfully, for instance by avoiding immigration checks or using a fraudulent document, if they overstayed their visa terms or permission to stay, or if they have taken unauthorized employment. Of the 681,200 non-EU citizens found to be illegally present in the EU in 2021, only 590 were British, which is still incomplete data, but some 110 cases were due to overstays, 90 to illegal entry, and 210 for other reasons. Refused entry at the EU external borders can be due to not fulfilling entry conditions such as having a valid passport or the right visa. Looking at the data for 2021, a period when strict COVID-19 rules were in place, 139,000 non-EU citizens were refused entry into the EU, and of these, 4,470 were British. France was responsible for more than half with 2,610. The Netherlands refused entry to 995 Brits, Switzerland 250, and so on and so on. I will not do all those numbers again, but I gave you the big list of the exit orders. But it is now, with not being in the EU, the British are affected by a lot of things now. But Eurostat regularly updates on these data, and under the withdrawal agreement signed by the UK and the EU, all EU nationals living lawfully in the UK and British citizens living lawfully in an EU or European Economic Area country before Brexit were entitled to stay in those countries for the remainder of their lives. Before Brexit, it was extremely difficult to remove a citizen of another EU member state, with exceptions made for those who present a genuine, present and sufficiently serious threat affecting one of the fundamental interests of society, as they put it. The approach on the countries differ because the EU does not have a say here. The member states have. That is what many also don't understand. And a spokesman for the Dutch Immigration Authority said they could not comment on the final quarter figures for 22, but noted return decision means that a residence application has been rejected or that a previously granted residence permit has been withdrawn. They said that for the previous quarter, 48% of the return decisions were imposed upon the rejection of an application for a residence permit based on the Brexit withdrawal agreement, either because the Briton did not reside in the Netherlands before January 1st in 2021 and therefore did not fall within the scope of the protection of the withdrawal agreement, or the Briton had been absent from the Netherlands longer than permitted for residency rights. Sweden's migration agency did not comment on the Eurostat data, but said in relation to the withdrawal agreement, the most common reasons for rejecting applications from Britons were uncompleted applications, late applications without reasonable grounds, and applicants not fulfilling the requirements for residence status. The Danish government, for example, announced that British nationals who missed the deadline for post-Brexit residency will be allowed to apply or reapply. At least 350 British nationals who lived in Denmark at the time of Brexit failed to apply to remain in the country before the deadline at the end of December 2021, and many were subsequently given orders to leave. But after criticism from rights groups who accused Danish immigration authorities of not correctly applying the rules of the Brexit withdrawal agreement, the government recently announced that the initial deadline was now extended until the end of 2023. And as I said, there was a lot of talk about this in the comments under my ECJ video, and then also under my clarifications video where I picked up the topic. And that's why I wanted to bring you the last data available. I left out some numbers in the end because the important ones were the leave orders I've shown you. That's why you saw a graphic about them. And that's why I wanted to talk about the reasons. So the reasons for this was really something I mentioned in the other video about Spain before, although Spain and France didn't deport people recently to Britain. But it often was the people's own fault by not applying for the residency status in time, missing deadlines, etc., but also not registering before Brexit, which was required in those countries where they are, and the British immigrants didn't do that. Because every single member state in the EU has different laws about staying in their country. And I want to clear up and repeat to clear up that mistake. The EU is not responsible for that. The EU is not responsible for everything. The EU is responsible for parts of what's happening in the EU, but a lot is determined by the member states, and immigration is absolutely one of them. And how immigrants have to register or not in their country and so on. And that's why many got an order to leave. And I do understand Sweden there, because the reasons they are bringing forward are quite valid. Well, Denmark is quite nice here with extending this because, and I say this for EU citizens in the UK as well, if you don't put a hand in your paper before a long deadline, it was a very long deadline, and we know about the Brexit referendum until the deadline ended. That was a long time. You have to do your side of the bargain if you want to stay in another country. But I hope this put some more detail into the talks about the deportations and the leave orders and everything we had in the other videos. I'll see you in my next video tomorrow. If you want to see right now, the next one is right here in the end screen. Then I'll see you there. I'll be back.